Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I am here with...
Hey, Grieve Leads and Fright Leans, it's Margaret, and welcome back. We've got, I don't know if you quite call them classics. They feel like classic horror movies. To me, I'm not sure about Anna. These movies probably really exemplify a lot of our generation, even though I'm Gen X, she's millennial. These movies feel like they cross over between our two generations beautifully. What movies are we talking about today?
So today we're going to play a little game of Run, Rabbit, Run. That's right. We're talking about The Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. I think they're great. Of course, I said my favorite of the two first. However, if you are going to be watching it, if you haven't seen them, watch House of a Thousand Corpses first, and then The Devil's Rejects, which will give you a really great timeline in terms of what's happening in the films. Gratuitous everything in these films. We have demented family dynamics, blood, gore, excessive violence, kidnapping, sexual assault,
Sadism.
clowns. What else?
Dude, and their sadism.
Pretty much you name
torture.
It's in there.
Yes.
So definitely if you are squeamish, this probably is not for you. I love both movies. I have since I first saw them. I just think they're great entertainment. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a wild ride. Both of the films, no pun intended. But yeah, so if you have made it this far and you want to continue, make sure you grab a little cup of your Bruja Brew, open up that coffin lid, and tune in.
Yes, welcome to House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. Oh yeah, like Anna was saying, these are violent movies. That being said, for the longest time, I had the biggest crush on Sherry Moon and Rob Zombie. So when you and your partner hey, who would be your freebie? I claimed them as the couple. I was like, no, I have to have this couple as my freebie, because they were just, I find that his dynamic with her, so those of you that may not know, Sherry Moon is married to Rob. I think she started as a dancer in one of his videos, and he really made sure that she was a big part of his career. So if he's making a movie, she's going to star in it. And I really appreciate, in the society we live in, where a male who can use his privilege to elevate the women in his life. So even though his movies, you watch these movies, you're not going to think that he is you're going to think he hates women by these movies, because they are so... They're
gory.
Yeah, they're gory.
Yeah. And
they're misogynistic. They're misogynistic, except even the women in this movie are misogynistic towards women. There's no respect for life. I'm going to say life, because they kill men too. I mean, oh my God, poor Rainn Wilson in House of a Thousand Corpses. Yes.
See, and you can tell I really love these movies because I cackle. I just think, to me, whether or not this is intended, the humor in these films is very strong. I just think they're funny. I have watched these movies with people who are like, I'm never watching a movie with her again. She is insane. This is not funny. Hey, that's okay. Some people who love the horror genre find it humorous because of the absurdity, because of the whole scenario. That is me. I love these movies. I enjoy them. Totally agree with Margaret, though, when we look at a lot of the female characters in these movies, like Mama Firefly, we find out, she's a thief and a prostitute and a killer and all these great things. And Baby, she just following in Mommy's footsteps, you know what I mean? And so they're not only misogynistic to other women, they're misogynistic to themselves in a sense. But it's all part of the dynamic. And I must say, though, despite all of the killing and violence and rage, I love how endearing like the fireflies and the driftwoods are to each other, because they are a family, and like they're in this together, like their whole little psycho roller coaster crazy world that they have created, it is their world and they're living through it and helping each other in it. um so I just, especially, the part where they can't find Tiny, just to think about that, or in the Devil's Rejects where the cops ascend onto the farm, and Mama Firefly is like, I was just thinking about when you were a fucking baby. You was beautiful, honey. And baby's like, thanks, Mama. And then they like get their weapons and they go on out, and it's great. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yes, these movies they're gonna be a huge thrill ride, not for the squeamish. And even like as you're talking about like the family dynamic, that is what holds them together. Like they are a family. And it even subtly touches on, again, this theme that we see a lot in horror movies is different socioeconomics and how higher socioeconomics judge lower socioeconomics. So in the first one, right, we have the stranded teenagers that are going across country. Maybe they're in their 20s, I'm say college kids.
Yeah.
And they get picked like babies, like, I can help you guys. My brother has a tow truck. We're good. And the judgment that the women place on baby. They don't like her. She's flirtatious. They're insecure in their femininity. So then they are rude. Like that. I don't know about you, but I was raised. If somebody is going to be hospitable to you and invite you into their house,
you should be appreciative.
You don't be rude. If you want to leave, you leave. And I was like, oh, like that was like right there, that judgment. Like, who are these hillbillies that picked us up?
Yeah.
Your car had, well, I mean, kind of like, you had a flat tire because they caused it. But if you didn't know that, they were still being hospitable to you.
Yeah. And for me, it was like, when they go to the house, I'm like, if I were like one of the people going to the house, I'd be like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, yeah, I'd be like asking Mama Firefly, like, do you need help preparing dinner? Can I do the dishes? Is there anything I can do? I mean, I probably would have like bonded with Otis and we would have fallen in love and had like psycho babies and lived like dementedly ever after or something, right? But
or psycho as he is that voice that is really saying our society is fucked up. We do not live in an okay society. Like, he is that voice. One of my favorite movie scenes, now we're gonna jump to Devil's Rejects, is when he's like, are you the devil? And he's like crying and he's like, what did he say? I'm here to do the devil's work. Like, there's just something commanding about Otis where you're just like drawn in to him because he is such a, well, I love the actor. So
oh, Bill's great. I met him several times. He's wonderful. And of course, like, we can't forget Sid Haig, rest in peace. Captain Spaulding is iconic. I mean, and he's once again fruity. He's so like the character. He's vulgar and gross, and like even like his fantasies are disturbing. Like, once again, House of a Thousand Corpses, he's asleep, he's dreaming, and he's hooking up with this woman, and then she's gonna kill him. She's like, laugh clown, and she pulls a gun on him. So like there's just this level of insanity throughout the entire family.
Oh yeah, and how that, like you said, like that family dynamics. And so in watching these, if you want to go a little bit deeper, you're looking at like, how do our families bond us? We could look at Tiny, because Tiny seems like the character that if he could have chose his family, he wouldn't have chose this family. If his dad hadn't burned him in the fire, he'd probably be the family member that left and got therapy and was like, no, like when I tell you my family's crazy, like I mean my family's crazy.
They'd be
and that
like,
he still
yeah,
takes care of them. He still
yes.
like shows up for them. And how
Mhm,
often in our families, I think
mhm.
back to when we're kids, and like I could talk all the trash I want about my family, but if somebody else was like, "Oh yeah, your sister," I'd be like, "No,
Yeah.
I can tell you the shit
Mhm.
about my family, but you cannot say my
Exactly.
mom, my dad, my sister, no, because
Mhm.
that's my family."
Exactly. Yeah, and I think you're right too. I feel like if the fire hadn't happened, I feel like they'd just be like, we don't see Tiny much anymore since he got a job in the big city and went to college. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's wild how bonded they are, and even like their activities. Like they have, photo albums and memory books of all of their victims, and like that's how they bond. Like, some of us sit around drinking hot cocoa and playing board games. This is their chosen form of bonding, right? Not that I'm condoning that in any way. We're talking about fiction and film
Mhm.
characters, listeners.
Yes.
So please know we're talking about these characters in the film. These are not lifestyle suggestions. We're just talking about how we find characters in movies endearing or not so much. Um, but yeah, I think the family is just great. Mama Firefly, both versions, because we know Karen Black was in the first one and then it was not feasible for the second one. But I love how she is just like this woman in like her 50s, maybe her 60s, who's like the ultimate seducer, and just she does not give a rat's rear end. Like she is just like, I got this, I own this, like whatever. Pistol whip me again, it's just I'm like, she's like an older woman who's like badass. And
Yes, she
yeah.
definitely like brings that like inspiration. Like as older women, they can be badass, they can
Hmm.
be tough. And I wanted to backtrack a little bit as you were talking about the family. So the movie House of a Thousand Corpses recently had whatever anniversary, and we saw
Yeah.
it in the theater. And they played like this little like Rob Zombie like interview. He's like standing in front of like a chain link fence. He was like, we didn't know if this movie was going to be made. When it was made, I didn't know if I was ever going to make another movie. So this movie basically is just a bunch of friends getting together and having a good time, and knowing that going into the movie, you can see that throughout House of
Yeah.
a Thousand Corpses. It's almost like when we were kids, we're like, let's play whatever make believe, and you're just
Yeah.
making up the story, you're having fun. My character's going to do this. My character,
Hmm.
you can see that like Sid Haig, all of them are just
Oh
having
yeah.
so much fun
Hmm.
making this movie.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so great. I mean, and I feel like the Devil's Rejects, I think they probably went in with the same mentality of like, let's just make it fun. Um, and it's a great watch. If you are into the horror genre and you have not seen these movies, please make sure you add them to your watch list immediately. They are awesome. They're great. If you don't agree with us, that's okay too. I just think that these are necessary watches. They're fantastic. They're great. I think too, just in terms of like a thanatological perspective, I see the first movie, like House of a Thousand Corpses, is more of a surprise. So I feel like Dr. Satan is grief. You want to pretend like it's not there, but it sneaks up on you and gets you. But then the Devil's Rejects, the sheriff and his brother, that entire situation is very grief strong, and even just his behavior. I mean, he is like intuitively grieving. Um, very strongly. Every time I look at him, though, I can't help but think Raising Arizona, um, that movie. But I mean, he's very, 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 very much in his own grief journey, and then this is how he's working to resolve it. Is by eliminating the family.
It's that revenge theme
Yeah.
we see that happens in horror movies where you have a bereaved person, and this happens especially in traumatic grief when we lose somebody suddenly, traumatically,
Hmm.
violently. we want somebody to pay. Somebody is
Yeah.
responsible for the death of our loved one, and they are going to pay. And so, as Anna
Mm-hmm.
was saying, we see that with him. The people that killed his brother are going to pay, and not just her.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody that she loves is going to pay because he is in so much pain.
Yeah. And I think that the end of the movie, when, I love it. Every time I hear the song Freebird, I always think about it. But when they're cruising and they're getting ready for the final battle, the level of blood and violence against, Baby and Otis, and it's so strong. And like, also, Sid Haig's character, Captain Spaulding, is in the vehicle too, and just, they're not just getting shot, they're getting shot up. Like, there is blood, there are chunks of flesh, there is so much flying through the air. And I think that's hugely representational of the grief that the sheriff is feeling about his brother. Like, when you're grieving, and especially in a traumatic, horrific situation related to your departed loved one, you don't just want closure. Sometimes you want the perpetrator or whoever caused this to feel what you're feeling, but even worse. And I think that Rob Zombie did an excellent job with that. I think that's a really spectacular way to show it.
Oh, I agree. He caught that like, there will be carnage. There will be, you will pay. You will feel my pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I do have to kind of go back. This would not be a Rob Zombie related podcast unless I mention one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever, and it's ridiculous. When Ken Foree's character and his henchmen go to get chickens, and the fellow on the side of the road, who's just, very rural stereotype, makes the comment about being a chicken fucker. And I don't know why it makes, well, no, I do know why, because I have a demented sense of humor. I think it's funny, but I think it also shows projection, because he's like, "Oh, you're not thinking about doing that, are you?" And of course, Ken's character is like, "You're disgusting. Why would I ever do something like that?" And then the guy's like, "Well, I have thought about it." And I was like, well, that's a great example of projection if I've ever seen one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great point. That, yeah, he's projecting.
Right? And maybe that's why it's, I don't know, it's just funny. But I think it's cool too, because you have all these people that, like, Captain Spaulding calls, the whorehouse. And sorry if that shocked any of the listeners, but it's a brothel. That's what it is. That's the business that he has. And he's like, "I'm coming there. I need a safe place." So you have all these safe places that you can go to as well. So even though, like, the family is very murderous, they have values that are not aligned with healthy living, they still have people that they can count on.
Yes. People that they trust.
Absolutely. And it's very much like when the authorities and, the bikers catch up with them, they're not going down without a fight. Like, it's basically like, these characters are their ride or dies.
And how the sheriff has his ride or die. Well, he's got more people that question him than
are you sure we should be doing this? Yeah.
Yes. But then even like with the sheriff, you've got Danny Trejo. And for wrestling fans, you've got Diamond Dallas
DP.
Page in there.
Yeah.
Which I like totally forgot that he was in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally.
Yeah.
So
He is
if you like
the nicest man. Like one of the nicest people I've ever met. I have to just say, like, he is so nice, and it's so funny to see him play like this character. But yeah, I mean, that's got a little something for everybody. And yeah, of course you've got like the outlaws, and then you've got the police, and then you have like the criminals, right? And it's a fun dynamic because you don't really have like your stereotypical archetype of like a final person that you're rooting for. It eliminates that character from the dynamic, and I really enjoy the tone. And I think after you see House of a Thousand Corpses, you know, there's the one scene where you're like, oh, she's gonna escape, and it's like, oh no, she didn't. Oh well. But you know, going into the other movies, you know, this is not we don't really have anyone like that we're supposed to root for in this film. So let's just figure out like who we want to root for. And that makes it even more fun because you can be watching it with like other people, and maybe they're rooting for the sheriff, or they're rooting for Danny Trejo, or they're rooting for, you know, the Fireflies. And that's what makes it fun too, because, you know, you cheer at different parts and for different reasons.
yes, you kind of ebb and flow with the characters, and you even touched on like the first time you watch House of a Thousand Corpses. So if you haven't seen it, you better go watch it now. At the end, you're like, oh, okay, so Captain Spaulding and Otis do know each other. There is a connection here, which is just so fun and delightful the first time you see it. I also forgot that Walton Goggins, or how you say his name is, those of you that love the Righteous Gemstones, Uncle Baby Bobby Billy, he is in it. He plays a cop. And I was just so delighted. Or people, he's in a lot of stuff, but he's another great person that you get to see.
Yeah, totally. And you know, I think like Baby, like her character is way smarter than people often give her credit for, because she's using what she has to work to her advantage. And yeah, we really see that a lot in, I think, The Devil's Rejects at the motel, where she's like, oh yeah, let's party, and she's, you know, flattering this guy Roy or whatever he's called, and then boom, you know. So it's just really great characters, wonderful dynamics. They're a lot of fun. I would love to find an amusement park ride that's similar to Captain Spaulding's Ride of Terror, or whatever it's called. I think it was fun, and that's the other thing too. Those rich college kids were making fun of it. See, if I went on a ride like that, I'd want to go again.
But see, that's where I feel like I would be like Chris Hardwick, like in that point where he's like, oh my gosh, the Tunnel of Terror or whatever. And he's like so excited, and like everyone's just kind of like, I guess. I feel like I'm that person like, oh my gosh, we're gonna go on like this totally cheesy, horrible, whatever it is. Like just that excitement. I loved that in him. And you're right, like the college girls were just kind of like,
this is so stupid. Yeah, like, no, I'd be like, okay, let's go again, you know? But once again, I think it's more, you know, if you like that weird stuff, and he's the weirdy of the group, and I think people tend to root for him in the movie because, you know, he's the one that's so similar to most of us as horror fans. Like, he's a little odd, kind of want him to make it, but oh well, then he doesn't.
Him and Rainn Wilson, right? They're just having fun. Like in my 20s, I totally would have loved to go on a cross country trip to see like all the haunted horror things. Hey, where's this? Where you know of Dr. or Dr. Satan? Where can we find him? Like just going on these folklore adventures, these urban legend adventures.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I would like to do that now. You know, I think it would just be super cool and super fun. Hey, so listeners, if anybody out there is interested in funding a cross-country Winnebago trip for Margaret and I, let us know. Just saying.
We'll cast on the road. We will actually cast when we are at...
Right?
You've got Blair Witch. I've got the Hatchet Lady. We could go to the Bell Witch, which would be, I'm really excited to check out, and also really terrified since we share a last name. So that also, I'm like, ah.
Yeah, and I'm not too far of the Jersey Devil. There's a lot. I mean, heck, we could even just drive up and down New England and hit all the Stephen King sites. I mean, there's so much that could be done.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, once again, you kind of have these characters that aren't, in some horror movies, as we mentioned, we find that they're not extremely likable, so you don't really miss them when they're gone. Yeah, so I agree though, like Ray Wilson and Chris Hardwick, like they're just super fun, like, living the life, especially Chris Hardwick's character. You can tell he's just like a total nerd and it's great. And then like the girls are just like, this sucks. Gotta get out of here.
Yes, and even that, like we were talking about all these dynamics, how as girlfriends, they just want to be with their boyfriends, I'm guessing. And so they go on this trip they really didn't want to go on. It is the 70s at this point, and so not being able, like, you know what? You guys go ahead and do that. We're fine. We don't need to join you. We can go do our own trip where here's the couples that you think are supposed to be like the healthy ones, and then you have this other family that really does support each other, even if their hobbies are not the best hobbies. There feels like there's more acceptance and who the family members are.
Yeah. And it's like, there's no kind of like you need to change. Like it's like, okay, well, we're part of the family and that's how it's gonna go or whatever.
And that we love you regardless. Like when Otis is like arguing with grandpa, like I think a lot of us feel like, oh yeah, like I have that family member that we're just bickering back and forth because that's how we love each other. It feels more endearing than college kids that just feel like there's more judgment.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is even these college kids, we assume they're spoiled, they haven't had to work, those sorts of things. Whereas like, the Fireflies, the Driftwoods, we know that the people in this family have lived hard. So I think in a sense, like if we take out and displace like the kidnapping, killing, all of the violence, they have a level of maturity and communication and understanding that these college kids don't, just through their life experiences as well. And I mean,
like you said,
like it's how many times does it happen in grief, right? Like you're new to grief, you've never experienced this before. You don't know how to act or react, and then there's someone who has been through a grief experience or several grief experiences, and it's just the level of communication is so different.
And even I think you're touching on how different dynamics have different levels of communication and how do we interact and what does that look like and what is a family norm. We could even look at this and say, oh my gosh, well, that's inappropriate how Baby and Otis talk to each other, or how he even sexualizes her, or how him and Grandpa talk to each other. And so often in our families, there are these norms that we really can't break. Like we're kind of in that, and if we want to break that, that's going to take a lot of work. And so how do we acknowledge norms? And the family does not seem like they want to change. They don't seem like they care. Otis is not in therapy about how mean his grandpa talks to him and wants to change that. Like Otis is enjoying, you can tell they enjoy that banter with each other.
Yeah, it's like, this is how we show our endearment to one another. This is how it is. And yeah, I mean, as demented as the family is, they are very much expressing their own sort of terms of endearment in their own way.
Yes. So Anna, in each movie, who do you most relate to?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like probably Mama Firefly, particularly in the first one, just because she's like, "Welcome to my home. Look at how cool and fabulous it is. We do things a little differently around here." And although like that's kind of where the parallels stop, like she wants to have her home nice and hospitable in the way that she sees what nice and hospitable are. And um she has a way of feeling people out. It's very unique to her, but um I definitely see some of those characteristics in myself. Although I behave very differently, I kind of relate to her in that way. And she also knows, um, which I'm really not an expert at this, but I admire her trait of getting people's goat. Like she knows what to say, what to do, how to act to really get someone, like especially with the sheriff. I don't know, I think in a way it's an admirable trait if you use it for good. It's a
Mm-hmm.
comedic trait in the films, but I just really appreciate that. How about you, Margaret?
I love that answer for you. A strong, commanding, humorous woman. Yes. I'm gonna go with Tiny.
Oh,
I'm there, I'm in it, I'm trying to support people. Even like when he's eating the cereal and there's that captive girl and he's kind of like, "You want some cereal?" Like, even though she's
yeah,
gonna
he's
use
so
it
sweet.
against him, it's just kind of like, "Oh, you're in a bad place. I
Mhm.
feel bad for you, so
Here's
you
some
want some
Captain Crunch.
cereal?"
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I like that answer for you too. He really, Tiny is so sweet. He's just endearing. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're just getting started with our Rob Zombie situation. We've talked about Halloween as well, and Michael Myers archetype. So we'll be going down the list. We still have a few other Rob Zombie films to explore. But until next time, listeners, if you have any questions or anything you'd like us to conjure, please let us know. Leave comments for us. We'd love to see them. And make sure you enjoy that Bruja Brew, close that little coffin, have a nap, and we'll see you on the next round. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.